In this video, we're going to demonstrate how the Altosoft product can build a feature-rich dashboard from 3 different data sources. Unlike most demos that you've probably seen that have been carefully staged using perfectly prepared and simple data, we're going to show you a more real-world example by accessing data from Oracle, SQL Server, and Microsoft Excel. We're then going to quickly incorporate these information assets into a typical dashboard layout, highlighting some of our powerful visualization features. So if you just give me 12 minutes of your time, I'll promise you'll be blown away by how fast and easy it is to build an interactive dashboard. To get started, we begin by using Altosoft Studio application, which will allow us to define our data sources, metric calculation logic, and other necessary configuration settings. One of the best features of our Studio application is its intuitive visual step-by-step guide. The guide is designed to allow any user, whether they are brand new or more familiar, to simply step through the entire process from defining a data source all the way to the deployment of a rich interactive dashboard. So for this demo, I'm going to build a dashboard for a sales company that needs help in analyzing its business operations selling widgets. Let's start by adding our first data source, which is a SQL Server database. Simply name your data source, enter your credentials, and connect to that data source, and we are off to get all the details about the available data. Once we've connected to the desired data source, we'll now need to create a record. A record in this case is any business fact, transaction, or event. Next, we'll select the data source in the table we're going to start with, and will automatically be presented with a list of fields from our table. And just a note, since all metrics are defined by time, we always provide a default time field for you on the right. Now here's the fun part. Selecting the data fields you want is as easy as simply dragging and dropping the source fields you care about on top of the record structure, and the software does the rest. Now to complete our record, we'll join another data table to get additional fields we need. You could add any other data from any other database, table, or web service. It's just as easy. Okay, having built our records, we must now define our metrics. We have several metric types, but we'll choose a pre-processed metric in this case. Oh, and for clarity, metrics are aggregations of records, usually in the form of count, sum, or average. Our sample company for now only needs a sum metric. By double-clicking the sum metric, I can visually define that metric using the condition editor. This is where I can define standard or custom logic without writing any code. Simply choose your record fields, select the operations in your metric expression, and build your metric definition. We'll complete our metric by defining some default formatting and the particular fields to be used for slicing and dicing our metrics later. Publish. With just one click, we automatically push everything we've set up out to our servers so we can begin designing our dashboards. Because this is from scratch, we need to load historical data associated with the record we just created. Of course, once this is set up the first time, it will then be automatic when new data is made available. Step 6. Now we're ready to design our dashboard. Okay, I'll log into our designer using our web-based browser, and notice our new project, our design, or view if you will. This is the view into which all things will be designed. We have a palette of chart types, but for now we'll click, drag, and drop a line chart onto our view. You'll see that dashboard components are easily positioned and resized to create any layout that you want. They also have a small menu attached to them, which are the 4 most used functions. Now we'll grab a grid component from our grid palette. Which brings me to another point. Another great capability in our platform that gives you tremendous flexibility is that each component can be independently configured of other components. Another point, since dimensions are ways to slice and dice data in the context relative to you, we give you the ability to easily determine additional drill downs and in what order. As you can see here, to change your drill down order, just click, drag, and drop. From our palette of filters, I'll drop a typical filter onto the view. Filters allow the user to restrict data by a specific dimension for an entire dashboard, specific component, or group of components. Another time-saving feature is that I can actually copy and paste an existing component and simply change its settings to give us our desired behavior. In this example, I'm going to change the dimension to filter by city instead of country. So just in about a minute and a half, we're ready for a preview. Preview mode not only lets us review our work, but also allows us to interact with the dashboard just as an end user would. I'll click a data point here just to test our drill down feature. Now let's exit out of preview mode so I can get back to Studio and add some more data to our project. Just like in the real world, now we want to add more data sources to our dashboard. So let's go back to our visual guide and simply follow the same steps as before. I'll add and name my data source just like before, but this time let's connect to an Oracle database and simply enter our credentials. Here you'll see that the system understands that since I'm connecting to an Oracle database, I must first select my database schema. Once I pick my HR scheme, I'll see my list of tables. And we'll come back out to the guide so we can again add another data source. And as usual, we'll name that data source. Let's go ahead and connect to an Excel spreadsheet. I'll browse for the particular file I want to use, and again, the software is smart enough to know that this spreadsheet doesn't have tables, so it presents me with individual worksheet tabs available for me to pull data from. Now, in order to take advantage of these new data sources, I need to incorporate these fields of interest into my records. We can do this exactly as we saw before. In this example, however, we can see another critical capability of the platform, the ability to quickly adapt to differences between different data sources. In this case, we need to define the rules for joining our Oracle tables to our SQL Server tables by adding a little custom logic, which, like everything else in the platform, is purely graphical and requires zero coding. Just like before, we simply drag and drop the fields we need from our new data tables and make them part of our existing record. You can also quickly rename files independent of the original data source names. This ability to dynamically adjust data mappings, naming conventions, and other typically complex operations on the fly and with zero code is the cornerstone of Altosoft's advantage over the rigidity of traditional ETL, data warehouse, and cube-based BI tools. Another great example of this is our ability to actually extend the logic of our data source itself without ever changing it. Let's add a derived field that allows us to categorize our sales-based number of units sold. We will define a range of values we want to correspond to small, medium, and large. Doing this with the Visual Condition Editor means that we can add and modify these conditions purely graphically with no risk of syntax errors or any knowledge of the nuances of a particular data source. In the case of our sample company, we need to define orders with quantities from 1 to 10 as small, from 11 to 20 as medium, and lastly, anything over 21 as large. Now that we set the conditions we needed for our order size, we simply drag and drop it into our record. Last but not least, we need to define a record for our last data source, the Excel spreadsheet. Since our software is smart, it automatically maps the spreadsheet data into our standard data model. Like previous examples, we quickly map the data into our new forecast record using the same drag and drop interface. Just like before, we select our preferred metric type and define its details. For our sample company, we'll choose sum as our aggregation type. Now, we select the record field related to our forecast and further assign some properties to some of the desired dimensions using our metric definition editor. Now remember, since the field we drag over can become a dimension, we have lots of possibilities. Now that we have a couple of metrics defined, we can use a derived field to capitalize on the work we've already completed with little extra effort. A derived metric is a metric that is calculated from two or more existing metrics that may come from multiple tables or even across different data sources. Once again, using our visual definition editor, we'll simply choose our record fields, select the options in our metric expression, and build our metric definition, again using simple or complex logic. Now let's go ahead and finish up by defining our submetric parameters, such as additional fields to be used as dimensions, and changing our default display format to be %. Now that we've added our additional data sources, we'll once again with one click automatically push everything we've set up out to our server so we can get back to designing our dashboards. So since we've changed our record and metric definitions, we'll go ahead and reload our data to ensure we pick up any new data dependencies. Now back to designing our dashboard. Using our browser, we'll go ahead and log into Designer. So before we get started, let's just recap on how we got to this point. We started with one SQL Server database, and within about 5 minutes we're able to start designing a dashboard. We then went back and integrated data from Oracle and an Excel spreadsheet, and then created some additional metrics based on this new data. As we saw, we did all this in Altosoft's single platform with no third-party tools or technologies and absolutely no coding. Now that I've grabbed the image component for our logo so we can brand our dashboard, I'll grab a text component so we can title our dashboard. Up to this point, we had only created a collection of standalone views. When we deliver our dashboard to our users, we will want to have these views assembled into a single functional dashboard with convenient navigation. So the next thing we'll need to add to turn this into a real dashboard is a menu component. The menu component will allow us to navigate between different views with a single click. Oh, and by the way, this application supports nested views as well. You can also take any individual component or collection of views and integrate them directly into your custom web application using a simple iframe or directly into your SharePoint environment as a native SharePoint web part. In addition, anything that you can see on screen as a dashboard can be used to generate a report for printing or automatically emailed to a user or groups of users on a predefined schedule. Just a side note, menus can have images attached to them to make them more visually appealing and intuitive. These menu items can be assigned to a plethora of actions from switching views to launching external applications to printing reports and much, much more. Menus can be multi-level with child or peer elements, and they also can be displayed in a variety of styles. In addition to using the menu to select what view to display, we can also add it to your options to bring up a bookmark page. This would allow the end user to configure a dashboard in a way that they want it and then store that configuration, either for themselves or for other dashboard users. There's so much you can do with menus. You can print the current view, you can print a report, and in this case a report being defined as a collection of dashboard pages to be printed, you can reset filters, or you can display external web content. Here we add a filter, this one to filter which employees are included in our charts and grids. Filters have a large number of choices as to their appearance and functionality. Now let's go ahead and switch to preview mode and check out our work. Through simple and familiar one-click navigation, our users can now easily access their critical information. And just like that, we've gone from a completely fresh start all the way to a final dashboard in less than 15 minutes. Altosoft is a true single end-to-end platform that provides you the power of enterprise class while empowering your true ease of use. So instead of you watching me play this demo, why don't you try it for yourself? Click the live demo button just above.